Hey, welcome back to 7 Minute Stories. We're here with Tina Haas. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, Pastor Lucas.
So we're going to hear your 7 minute story. It's just going to be a time where we talk and you tell what's going on in your life, who are you, where you come from, what's God doing in your life. So you can talk about anything you want for 7 minutes. Those are kind of the rules of 7 minute stories.
All right.
And we'll put 7 minutes on the clock. And are you ready to take it away?
I am ready to take it away.
Tell me your 7 minute story.
All right. Well, this is kind of a story of my past and what brought me to where I am today and kind of my relationship with God and throughout my whole life. So I was born and raised in a very dysfunctional and abusive family. And for a long time, that was just what I thought was normal. From a young age, I was kind of dubbed as the black sheep of the family because I didn't always conform with some of the racist rhetorics or some of the other things that were going on. I was always the black sheep and the person with the bleeding heart and things like that. And this generational dysfunction and the with the mental illness, my parents couldn't teach me what they didn't know. So I really struggled as a kid. I struggled with relationships and what a healthy relationship was. I struggled with just social skills and self-regulation and all of those things that you're supposed to learn as a kid. I didn't learn because my parents weren't able to teach me this. And so when I was in 7th grade, that was when I guess my story really starts. It's when all of you're going through your changes, you're going through social changes and everything. And I remember just feeling like I was hated at home. I didn't feel safe at home. And so I would go to school and just try and keep my head down. And there was one day that will forever be just a black mark on my history, I feel. And I remember being in science class one day and these kids started to bully me because I started having acne. And I sat there and I was just crying, and I looked over at my teacher and he didn't say anything, and none of the kids in my class said anything. And I mean, my teacher was just looking straight at me, didn't say a word to the kids or to me. And at that moment, that was the first time in my life where I just felt completely unlovable and unworthy. I wasn't loved at home. I wasn't loved by the kids at school. I wasn't even good enough for a teacher to stand up for when he was watching me be bullied. And so I went home, and that week I just kind of fell into a really deep depression. And my dad was a sheriff's deputy, and I knew where he kept his gun. And I was in 7th grade, 13 years old. I went and I took his gun out of his closet, and I went to my closet and I sat down and I held it in my hands, and I thought for the first time in my life about just ending it and just making the pain go away. And as I was sitting there, I had my radio playing in my bedroom, and a song came on the radio. And you probably remember the song, "Don't give up, you got a reason to live." And I just sat there and I was like, okay, God, I hear you. I hear you. And so I put it back and I decided to keep marching on. And that summer, one of my friends from the neighborhood, she invited me to go to church camp with her. My family was not we were not involved with church. I couldn't believe when my parents agreed to let me go because it was down in Florida. And so we went down to Florida, and I fell in love with God and with the community and with everything. And I met a good friend while I was down there. I still talk to him today. He was from St. Louis. And so when I came back, I tried really hard to just to live that life that I wanted to live. I didn't have the models at home showing me what it was like to be a good person and to live a Christian life, but I knew it was possible. And so I tried really hard, but my family, being the dysfunctional unit that it was, they didn't want me to be different or to grow in that way. And so they would purposely do things to push me to my limits and to break me, and then they would use that as their quote unquote proof that I hadn't changed and that I wasn't a Christian. And my mom, actually, I remember her telling me one day that she didn't believe in any of this born again stuff, and that it was all just it just wasn't anything that she was going to buy into. But I kept going. I went to youth group and to church with my friend Christy on the weekends. And my friend that I had met down at church camp in Florida, I met up with him. He came into Kansas City one weekend, and so we met up at the mall in Independence, and he gave me a Bible. It was my first Bible, and he actually snuck it to me because he told me he didn't want me to get in trouble. He didn't want my mom to get mad that he had given it to me, so he put it in a little bag and kind of snuck it to me. And so I would take that, and I still have it today. It's all marked up and colored on and stickers all over it and everything. And that same closet that I went and sat in with that gun that night, I sat in that closet and I started reading the Bible by myself. And the first book that I ever read in all of its entirety was the book of Job. And I didn't know at the time how meaningful that was going to be in my life. There was a reason that my fingers and my heart were directed to that book that day. So, I went through the rest of middle school and high school, and I continued struggling with issues with suicide and with depression and anxiety. And I married really young, and when I married, I started a career, I bought a house, and then later I found that I wanted to start a family. And when I tried to start a family, I ended up losing child after child, and out of 5 pregnancies, I have 1 son to show for it, and I'm grateful for that. But at the time, it was really hard, and it plunged me down into an even deeper depression, and I started having those feelings of wanting to just make it end again. I finally had my son, and then after he was born, the postpartum depression hit really, really hard, and I had a hard time struggling, trying to keep up with everything. And when he was about 10 months old, my husband left, and he told me that he was going to leave me because it was a sign from God that we weren't meant to be together, that we lost all of those babies, and that I just got pregnant and it stuck, and he felt stuck. And so he left, and I picked up and I kept moving on, but it didn't stop. It was just putting a mask on the depression and the anxiety every day, the feeling of not being enough and not being loved. And when my son was about 1.5 years old, I met Matt, who is my husband now. And he and we started a relationship, and at the same time, my family dynamics had started changing, and I had become really dependent upon this dysfunctional family to help me raise my son because I was a single mother. And they used that as ways to try and manipulate and control me, and it just felt like I had to get out. And so when Matt decided that he wanted to go back to Michigan to be with his kids, he had a couple of teenagers that still lived in Michigan where he came from, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go with you. I need to have my space. I need to have my own life. And when I made that decision, my family did everything they could to try and attack me and control me and to keep me here. I remember my brothers getting on my Facebook wall saying, you should just kill yourself, and God gave you all of those miscarriages because you were never meant to be a mom. Things that were said publicly, to where my friends and my colleagues and my friends at church and everyone were seeing these things, and it was just devastating. I felt like I had nothing left in the world. And so I cried my whole 12-hour drive moving up to Detroit. And then that first year I spent there, I had 2 teenage stepkids who did not want me to be a stepmom, and they made that very clear. And so every day I would just get up and do what I needed to do, and I'd cry in the shower and cry on my way to work and cry on my way home. And after about 1 year of that, all of the voices from my past started to come back. You're not good enough. You are unloved. You are unworthy. The people who had tried to use my relationship with God against me started really making me question my faith and where I was at. And I eventually convinced myself that my family would be better off if I was gone. So I told my husband one night that I was really depressed and that I was scared, and he didn't take it for the weight he didn't feel the weight that it was, and he kind of blew me off. And I don't want to say that he's not supportive or anything in that sense. He is. He just didn't understand at that moment.
Sometimes it can be the, oh no, like it's okay, like
And
that's
that's
all
what it
is.
was. Yeah. And he didn't know that every time I got in the car and I saw a bridge, I was picturing myself falling off of it. He didn't know that it was permeating every thought of every day. So the next morning I got up and I wrote an email to my friend back here who was living in Gardner, actually. And I told her that I was going to be gone by the end of the week. So I left my apartment that day. I went to meet up with somebody that I was supposed to meet for the first time. And I remember sitting there talking to her and just having this normal conversation. And in my head, I was thinking, she has no idea that I'm just going to go home and kill myself. And I'm so good at faking it at this point, and I shouldn't be, but I am. My friend Tara got hold of Matt, and he knew where I was going to be, so he came out to the city and he found me and took me home, and he helped me get the help that I needed. And it was intensive, and it was hard, and it was ugly, just diving into all of the trauma and the emotional abuse and the some of the physical abuse and everything that I had gone through. But I finally started learning those skills. You know, in my late 20s, I'm finally learning those skills that I should have learned when I was a teenager, when I was a kid, that I was never taught. And during this time, I really, for the first time, I really started doubting the existence of God. I had always just stayed firm in that belief, but I really started just doubting, like, how could these things keep happening, one thing after another? How could this keep happening? So I started looking into some other things. I'd always been interested in Buddhism. I started looking into what does it mean to be a Wiccan, you know, just kind of searching for, like, how do other people see God, and, you know, something outside of the Christianity that I had spent my life focusing on. And then Matt ended up getting transferred back here to Kansas. So during that time, I put it out there, and I said, you know what, universe, just take me to my tribe. Take me to wherever I'm going to be, where I am going to grow and become the person that I'm meant to be in this universe. And so we ended up down here in Gardner, right next door to my best friend who I had emailed. And we started coming to New Life. And at first it was kind of, you know, that was just what we did. I had still been going to my church up in Detroit, but I felt disconnected from it. And so when I came here, I really started looking into the history of Christianity. We got an archaeology Bible, and I started looking into the facts and the dates and the artifacts and stuff. And for me, I'm actually a world history teacher. And so that was where my brain was able to make those connections where I'm like, oh, okay, there's some really good substance here. It's not just all of the spiritual stuff, but there's some history here too, and started making those connections. And we got involved with a life group and started becoming more involved with the community. And after a while, I just really fell into this life where I feel like today I look back on where I was 5 years ago, and I was just surviving then, just trying to get up and stay alive until the end of the day. And I look at my life today, and I feel like I am so loved and accepted and a part of this community where I'm really thriving. And I really feel like I have been able to grow my relationship with God and with Jesus and with the people in this community as well. And I made it to the other side of the mountain. Yeah. And it's a pretty good view over here.
Well, that's an incredible story, and I'm really glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're in that good space where you feel like you're growing and you're maturing and you feel loved and accepted in the community. So that's very powerful. I'm really glad that you came in to share that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us here. We hope that this blesses you, and we can't wait to hear your story. See you next time.